hi besties, Juli.a.Strology here. I'm also Julia Emily. Hannah Montana moment, just kidding. Juli.a.Strology here. I've been thinking about making a video comparing my tropical chart to my sidereal chart, and so I just wanted to do that now. I still don't know how to use my video editor, but we'll try. So hopefully I can show you the two charts, but I'll go over them right now. Actually, I wanted to read a little bit of Post-Colonial Astrology by Alice Sparkly Cat, whose name is Ace, actually, but yeah, I was reading this and then I just decided to reread from the beginning, so I was like, I don't really remember the parts that I read, and I got to this part and I was like, I wanna read this. It's kind of long, but I'm not reading journals, so it'll be less reading than normal overall. Anyway, okay, a lot of people, whether they're millennials or boomers, white or other, queer or cis-normal, have told me they were, I also have two cats, that's Wasabi, have told me they were first attracted to astrology because it seems to offer a way to talk among ourselves, without, oh my gosh, sorry, okay, Wasabi, don't chew on my cords, please. Okay. A lot of people, whether they're millennials or boomers, white or other, queer or I'm having such a hard time with this. It's like maybe my light's not on and then I can use that as an excuse. Here he is. Look at Wasabi. Okay. A lot of people, whether they're millennials or boomers, white or other, queer or cis-normal, have told me they were first attracted to astrology because it seems to offer a way to talk among ourselves about ourselves without having to address the trappings of identity. He's just gonna make all kinds of background noise. At the same part that I was rather than talking about ourselves, why is this so hard for me today? Rather than talking about ourselves within the typical categories of race, gender, and class, people want to build community around identities that feel authentic and close. Astrology fans want identity to be as complex as humanity. And I've seen astrology bring people together. I've seen queers relax and smile when their friends tease them about their moon sign, laughing along with them about being a Leo rising because it makes them feel so seen. I've seen sarcastic New York seniors who do not otherwise want to share their stories come together and ask whether we can all talk sincerely with one another about our natal charts. I've seen teens who are otherwise self-conscious and guarded about where they are, shielding themselves with fashion or learned academic language, admit they have a lot of deep feelings as a Scorpio. I've seen kids talk about the burdens and joys of being a Capricorn with big dreams, of being an Aquarius who is just the right amount of cynical, but with a huge helping of healthy smart acidness. I've seen the request for someone's sun, moon, or rising sign become a tender shorthand for I'd like to know you better. And the invitation to talking about astrology be shorthand for I'd like to hear you imagine yourself beyond how I was taught to perceive you. Okay. Start over. Okay. I've seen the request for someone's sun, moon, or rising sign become a tender shorthand for I'd like to know you better, and the invitation to talking about astrology be shorthand for I'd like to hear you imagine yourself beyond how I was taught to perceive you. Through astrology, we are funny, sincere, and vulnerable. We use astrology to see each other. Astrology occupies a healing role in our communities. Folks come to astrologers when they feel stunned in their careers by lack of wealth, when they feel stuck in relationships where they are not acknowledged, when they seek to process sexual violence, when they are grieving, and so on. Those seeking astrological counseling trust that their astrologer will not diagnose their problems with the individualized and biological framework offered by the modern psychiatric industry. They understand that the lack of standardization within astrology means that no two astrology readings from different astrologers will be the same. People choose astrologers for their subjectivities. Not all astrologers know what it's like to experience racism. Not all astrologers understand what it's like to encounter sexual violence or to realize how normalized this violence is. Not all astrologers want or choose to counsel clients through trauma. If astrology is a mental health profession, then it is an imperfect one because astrologers ourselves are imperfect. Astrology is a tool through which imperfect people try our best to talk to each other. There are problems within astrology. Where does one's gender identity fit into the gendered binaries of Venus and Mars? How can we define our abundance away from cultural capitals when the sun collapses power and wealth into the solitary figure of the sovereign? What kind of Saturn or government should we be creating when we feel disillusioned by the prospect of government? Why is the concern of citizenship so related to genealogy? And the most crucial question, why do we keep taking these Greco-Roman ideas and archetypes and applying them to everyone as if they're universal and overarching? But astrology is not alone in its attempts to create universality out of classical aesthetics and a dash of scientific modernity. We don't understand Greco-Roman emotions to be universal because of astrology. Rather, astrology understands Greco-Roman emotions to be universal because so many institutions do. When we say we are depressed, we are referring to the Latin deprimere, which not only means to press down, but is also associated with a lowering of economic value, ? Or why, or are we saying we are melancholic, which is associated with black humor, as if blackness is intrinsically sad or stagnant? When we say we are paranoid, are we really describing ourselves with the Latin terms para, which means contrary to, and nous, which means mind? Do these Roman concepts of what it means to exist as contrary to one's own mind infiltrate those of us who do not claim Roman genealogy? When we find that the roots of the words anxious and anger connect to the Latin word angere, which means to choke, do those of us who do not descend from Rome experience anger and anxiety differently? Or are these emotions a part of a modernity that has already recreated the world in a pseudo-Roman image? When we use Roman ideas to describe our intimate mental conditions, aren't we accepting the promise of universality within Western hegemony? Why is it that all mental illness can only be seen as a scientific and biological reality instead of a cultural imagining, when it is described through Roman words? Romanization doesn't just influence how we talk about emotions, it also influences how we classify relatedness and genealogy and kin. We call our non-human ancestors by their Latin names, finding that they are tetrapods or bipedal, that they are of the Colosteus genus. Colosteus refers to the Latin word colossus, meaning gigantic, and genus means race, birth, or stock, and that they are the Animalia family. Animalia comes from the Latin root ane, which means, Animalia comes from the Latin word ane, which means to breathe, and family refers to the Latin concept of household. We talk about the Paleolithic times, paleo meaning stone, without meaning to refer to either Hesiod's or Virgil's ages of the metals, in which race is either seen as slowly eroding or revitalizing itself through birth. Our intimate connections with family, land, time, genealogical, and historical have a distinctly Roman flavor. This Roman flavor tastes like marble stripped of color because only the primitive would ever paint their statues, even though the Romans did paint their statues. It feels like reality. It appears that the problem of Romanization is not astrology's problem, but the West's problem. Science and astrology are not diametrically opposed. Both of these ideological and spiritual practices attempt to implement Roman symbols into modernity. Both of these practices understand the real as the Roman. I am not against Hellenistic astrology, but to understand the astrological techniques of essential dignity caput and cauda draconis, planetary detriment or antithesis, fate and fortune, and to give these concepts to a client pretending that they are universal truths made real by history, is to perpetuate a certain genealogy, and by way of perpetuating a certain genealogy, a certain storytelling, to speak ourselves through these genealogies in order to feel some relief from always having to understand ourselves as sexualized, gendered, raced subjects of someone else's imagination, and to redeem ourselves as human through the archetypes within astrology is not a general or universal or natural move. It's a specific move and must be considered strategically. So that's just something that I think is a good thing to remember. I always try to, if I'm like talking to someone about their chart, and I'll say like, oh, well, Mars is a malefic, but it's like, it doesn't have to be, you know, like that's how it's considered to a lot of people. But like, I don't think that we should necessarily view everything in our lives as like good and bad. And if you want to talk about like the Bible and like specifically the Adam and Eve story, it's like they were in paradise until they ate fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And it's like, okay, so knowledge of like good and evil is like what's making us suffer. Like if you just follow your passion and just do what you want to do and don't think about like, oh, is this, should I be doing this? Is this good? Like, I think everyone has a place in this world. They should just be following their excitement. But there's so many like societal factors that go into that, and like parental pressure. Like a lot of kids in like med school or law school because their parents want them to be doctors or lawyers even though they have no interest in it. It's like, okay, your parents are gonna die someday and you're still gonna be like trying to make them happy, and you've like wasted so much of your life. Anyway, so that's kind of a tangent, but okay. So let's get into the charts. Maybe this isn't a good day to do this because my voice already feels kind of raspy, but okay. So just to go over, I'll start with like the rising sign and then go from there. So in my tropical chart, I have Aquarius rising. It's about 20 degrees Aquarius, and that's ruled by Saturn in Pisces. And then I have no planets in Aries. Let me move my phone over so I can, I obviously know my chart, but no planets in Aries, no planets in Taurus. I have the moon in Gemini. Moon in Gemini, Mars in Cancer, which is making a trine to Saturn. The moon is square Saturn. I have no planets in Leo, which is my 7th house. Okay, Sun, Chiron, and Mercury all in Virgo. Venus in Libra, heck yeah. Okay, Jupiter, North Node, and Pluto all in Scorpio. I have my midheaven in Sagittarius in the 11th house, and then Neptune and Uranus in Capricorn in the 12th house. And then, so if you don't know, the tropical zodiac is based on the changing of the seasons. So when the beginning of spring is the beginning of Aries season. Meanwhile, the sidereal, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I think I've heard someone pronounce it sidereal, but I don't like that. So I'm going to be saying sidereal. Sorry, complain in the comments if you don't like it and I'll learn how it's really pronounced. Anyway, so in my sidereal chart, sidereal is based on the constellation. So when the sun is moving through the constellation of Aries, that's Aries season. And those have shifted over time. So now it's like, I think like the age of Pisces, age of Aquarius thing has to do with that, the precession. So like the spring equinox happens when the sun is going through the constellation of Aquarius now. I don't know, that doesn't sound right to me, but because they've shifted like 25 degrees. So that would be too far, but I don't know. If you're interested in that, do your own research, I guess. But anyway, so according to the constellations, my sidereal chart, I have 26 degrees Capricorn rising, which is again ruled by Saturn in the 2nd house. So either way, I'm Saturn ruled, and I have Saturn in the 2nd house. If I'm only looking at like whole sign houses for tropical. And then I think most sidereal astrologers just like automatically use like whole sign houses. I don't think they call it that, but they don't use like Placidus with sidereal. Although I have looked at my chart that way and it's kind of cool, but we won't get into that. So Capricorn rising, Saturn in Aquarius. I have no planets in Pisces, no planets in Aries. So Aries is empty either way for me. And then moon in Taurus, which is cool. Mars in Gemini. Cancer is empty. It's my 7th house. So either way, my 7th house is empty. I have my sun in Leo, which is cool because that's the sign the sun rules. It's co-present with Chiron and Mercury. And then I have Venus in Virgo. And then the only planet that stays the same is Pluto. So I have Jupiter and the North Node in Libra, and then Pluto is in the 11th house with the midheaven in Scorpio, instead of the 10th house like it is in tropical. And I have Neptune and Uranus in Sagittarius, also in the 12th house. So like the house placements pretty much stay the same, except for Pluto goes from the 10th to the 11th. And then I also would like to do a chart comparison with my chart just in tropical, whole sign houses versus Placidus, or maybe a different quadrant house system or something. Maybe I'll do equal houses and like, anyway. So let's get into it. So in my tropical chart, so I have my sun and moon both in Mercury ruled signs, and then Mercury in, it's actually in the sign that it rules and exaltation in Virgo. It's the only planet that has that. Oh my gosh. That's wasabi. So yeah, Mercury rules Virgo and is exalted in Virgo. So that's pretty cool. And I have Venus in her own sign as well. Venus in Libra. And like I said, I'm Saturn ruled in both of them. And then in the sidereal chart, oh, let's keep going tropical. Just planetary dignities. Virgo in its own sign and exaltation. Libra in her own sign. And I have Mars in fall in Cancer. And then in sidereal, I have my sun in its own sign in Leo. I have the moon exalted in Taurus. And I have Saturn in its own sign in Aquarius, but I have Venus in fall in Virgo. So it's like two planets in their own sign, one planet exalted, one planet in fall in both. So that's kind of interesting. I don't think that's that common, that matches up so well. And then the other thing that I think about a lot is I have Jupiter in the 10th house, which is like Jupiter is the planet of luck, and the 10th house is career. So like ideally, or like looking at that, you would think like, oh, I might have a lot of luck when it comes to like my career, but Jupiter in my tropical zodiac, and looking through the tropical zodiac, Jupiter in Scorpio is ruled by Mars in fall in Cancer. So that's not great, although they do make a trine to each other, and Mars rules Scorpio and Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, so that gives them what's called mutual reception, and they're like applying to an aspect, so it's like it's really good mutual reception. And then Jupiter also trines Saturn in Pisces, which is the sign, one of the signs that Jupiter rules, so that's pretty good. And then in my sidereal chart, I also have Jupiter in the 10th house in Libra ruled by Venus in fall in Virgo. So it's like both in both systems, or both zodiacs, I have Jupiter in the 10th house ruled by a planet in fall. So planets in fall, oh my gosh, Paul is hissing at wasabi. Okay. In both zodiacs, my 10th house, Jupiter, is ruled by a planet in fall. So it's like I should have luck in career, but it's ruled by a planet that doesn't have the resources that it needs. So that's interesting. And let's talk about career for a little bit. So recently, I've been doing these videos, these astrology videos, and also music. Like I wrote music about Valentine's Day, and I was doing like song covers. I'm still doing that, and I have I have another album that I'm working on coming out later once I put music. I have lyrics to it and I don't have music to it, which is the same problem I had last time, and I keep thinking like I can't do it. But I know that I can do it because I've already done it, so I just need to get over that. Just write some dang music. But it's like, do I have Venus in Libra, where she rules, or do I have Venus in fall in Virgo? So it's like, interesting. And then, so my sun is either in Virgo or Leo. Leo to me is like a performer, like they like to it's ruled by the sun. The sun gives off light. The sun, not that it wants to be seen, but it's visible. You can see it. If you look outside during the day, as long as it's not like cloudy or whatever, you can see the sun, whether you want to or not. So Leo kind of reminds me of actors, especially like Scorpio rising, who has Leo in the 10th house. That, like, to me just screams actor. But just the sign of Leo, like, is a performer to me. And then so I either have my sun in Leo or Virgo. Virgo is like an editor or like a writer to me, and I do both of those things. And actually, like, when I'm doing music videos, I like to think of myself as like my alter ego, Julia Emily, and then so I'm like performing and I'm like, this is me as like a Leo sun, and then when I'm editing, I'll be like, this is me as a Virgo sun. So it's like I kind of use both of them for like whatever I feel I need to do. Anyway. And yeah, like most of the house placements are the same. So it's like I have Saturn, the ruler of my ascendant either way, in the 2nd house. And I feel like I'm very like strict on morals. Like the 2nd house deals with like your objects, like things that you own. I think it deals with food. And I also like have trouble eating sometimes. It hasn't been so bad recently, but like I used to get like nauseous eating. Like I'd get like halfway through my food, almost said phone, halfway through my food, and I'd start feeling really nauseous. And there was one time I was with a bunch of other people at a restaurant, and I would stop eating at that point, and they kept like pressuring me to keep eating, and then I ended up throwing up. Like we were at the restaurant, and then we went to another like supermarket, and there were like, it was like a Vietnamese market, and there were like live frogs and like fish and stuff, and it just kind of like made my stomach like feel like, oh, what's going on? And then we went to another grocery store and I threw up in the parking lot, and it was just like, maybe it wasn't just pushing past the food, but like also a combination of like seeing the frogs and like smelling the fish and stuff, which not the like frogs are that gross, but it's just like I'm not used to seeing them in the grocery store, and I kind of like got sad about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, poor frogs. Not like, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, so, but also the 2nd house deals with like your morals and your values, like even if it's not like a physical thing, but just like things that are yours. And I do feel like like I'll stop talking to somebody because like my dad's going to meet his brother right now, not right now, but like today. And I'm like, I don't want to see him, and we don't need to get into it, but he's just like racist and sexist, and like I once heard him like proudly say like, we're Hillary's deplorables, racist, sexist, homophobic bigots or something. I'm like, oh wow, congratulations. Which like I don't yeah, I'm just like, I refuse to talk to people who like, you know, like, not that we can have a difference of opinion on like favorite ice cream flavors or pizza topping. Like if you think pineapple doesn't go on pizza, like, okay, you're missing out. But we can still be friends. But if you're gonna be racist and sexist and homophobic and like proud of it, it's not even like I can like sit and talk to him and be like, well, why do you think that? He's like, that's his identity, you know, and he's proud of it. So I'm like, why would I ever want to talk to you? So yeah, and then so I do feel like I'm ruled by my morals in a lot of ways. So either way, Saturn in the 2nd house. I also have had a lot of people, speaking of being Saturn ruled, like one of my coworkers invited me to her birthday party, and we went and like got some drinks at a bar, and I was like dancing. Like this was after I graduated from college. So I'd been to like some parties at college and stuff, and people were like surprised that I was fun. Like, they're like, you're so different than you are at work. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm not at work. Like, what do you mean? Anyway, I think work, like when I was working at like restaurants and stuff, that'd be like 6th house-y, which is Mars. And when I worked at like a food court on my college campus, and I was like, this isn't, I was gonna say, I was like never sitting down. I would walk around, just like upstairs, walk around, go downstairs, walk around, I was just constantly moving. And then it got to a point where it was like, okay, there's nothing to do. And I had like friends that worked with me after a while. And so we would like sit and like hang out and just like sit for hours. And sometimes we'd hide. There's like a little restaurant off the kitchen that they were only open for 2 hours a day. So that like for 1 hour they'd be like prepping, opening, then they were open for 2 hours, and then they were like closing. So it was like 4 hours basically that there were people in there. And so like if we were working after that, we'd go sit and hide like at the bar of this restaurant, and like nobody cared. But like and then after I graduated, I worked at a restaurant, actually 2 restaurants, but I was like always just so busy. Like when I was hosting, I would like stand at the host stand and be like, I'm bored, like let me go bust some tables, let me go run some drinks. Like I didn't want to just be like standing around doing nothing, which I feel like is very Mars in the 6th house. So it just depends, is it Mars in Cancer in the 6th house, ruled by the moon in the 5th house, which is then ruled by Mercury in the 8th house, or is it Mars in Gemini, ruled by Mercury in the 8th house, in Leo, ruled by the sun in the 8th house. So either way, yeah, and either way the sun's in the 8th house, which the sun, again, wants to be seen, but the sun is very visible, but the 8th house is one of the invisible houses. So that's an interesting dynamic. In Placidus, I do have my sun in the 7th house. Oh, there's a puppy walking through my yard. Hi, puppy. Okay. So yeah, the sun is in the 8th house, and I do remember, like, when I had a therapist, I remember telling her, like, I feel like people just, like, don't really see me, like, like, I'll be, like I said, at work, like, people were like, oh, you're so different, you know, I didn't know you were fun. And it's like, I just feel like invisible sometimes, because like I think I'm cool, I think I'm like smart and like funny and talented and stuff, but I feel like other people like don't get to see that, maybe just because I'm like working so often or like something. And then she said, like, from experience, I feel like that means you don't like yourself and you're like projecting onto other people. I was like, I don't think that's true. And then I started learning astrology after that, and I'm like, yeah, the sun in the 8th house really makes sense, and conjunct Chiron too. Yeah, Chiron is the wounded healer, so it's like, and also Chiron had some messed up like birth circumstances, and like my mom told me that she didn't want to have kids when she had me, so there's like part of me that feels like I shouldn't have been born and stuff. So sun conjunct Chiron in the 8th house, either way, makes a lot of sense for that. But it's like, is it in Leo or is it in Virgo? Okay, let's see, is there anything else that I can talk about? And then Pluto's in Scorpio either way. That's like the one planet that stays in the same sign, because it's at 25 degrees Scorpio in my tropical, and like I said, it shifts 25 degrees. So it's at 0 degrees Scorpio in the sidereal chart, but it shifts from the 10th to the 11th house. So that's interesting. And I feel like when I was growing up, a lot of my friends, I don't feel like this is true, a lot of my friends moved. Like I would make friends or make a friend, and then they would like move at some point, like within a year or two, and then I would like make a new friend, and then they would move, and then I made a new friend. And like by the time I got to high school, I was just like, I don't feel like I just had abandonment issues already, you know? So like then yeah, the last friend who moved was 9th grade, I think. I'm sure there were more later, but like I wasn't as close to them anymore. And so I just kind of like drifted through friend groups, because I was like, it doesn't matter, like nothing's permanent, you know? So I feel like that's very like Pluto in the 11th house kind of thing. But then also a lot of like my coworker, like I was sexually assaulted by multiple men that I had met through jobs. So like that could be like 10th housey Pluto. So I'm like, both of those make sense. And then like the one other thing that I'll say, because I don't want this to come across as like, well, if both of those make sense, then like how do you know astrology is even real? How do you know it's not just like confirmation bias? Because I had an astronomy professor tell us that astrology was just confirmation bias. Like you get your horoscope in a magazine. So he's talking about sun sign astrology, first of all. Like you don't actually know what you're talking about, but I didn't know anything back then either. But anyway, he's like, you get your horoscope, you only read your own. Like you're not reading all of them. So like if you're a Virgo, you're just gonna read the Virgo one, and it's like something, they just say something that's really vague that could apply to anybody, and you're not going through and seeing like that all of them could apply to you. You're only looking at your own, which isn't true. I would look at like mine, and I would look at like my sisters and like my friends and like my crushes. Like if I even before I believed in astrology, I was just like, I'm just curious, you know. Like especially when there was like the big astrology memes on Tumblr, like they would just put like any like soaps by astrology sign, and I would like screenshot them and send them to like my friends. So I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Astronomy Professor. But yeah, he did say astrology was just confirmation bias. So like I feel like if I'm talking about how like, oh, both of these charts are different but they both make sense, people will be like, that means it's like astrology isn't real or something. But so like for example, Mars in Cancer versus Mars in Gemini, Mars is red. Mars severs. Mars rules like cuts, scars, and like surgeries and stuff. And there was like I had a cyst on my shoulder right here. So anyone who doesn't know the astrological body, it's like Aries rules the head, Taurus rules the throat, where like Venus rules like singing and stuff, so Taurus throat, and then Gemini is like splits off into the shoulders because it's the twins, and then Cancer rules like the breasts and sometimes the stomach, but like Leo rules the heart, Virgo rules the stomach, etc., down to the feet for Pisces. So Mars in Cancer versus Mars in Gemini, I had a cyst on my, like, a little under my shoulder, but still. And I needed to get surgery for it, and now there's a scar there. And then there's also Mars in Cancer. I have a little red mark, like right in this areola. Just a little tiny red dot, just right above my nipple. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube. Not that these videos are monetized, but, so it's like they both make sense, like, but it's not like I have a bunch of scars everywhere. It's not like I have scars and red marks in like, it's these two places. And although I do have a scar on my finger, but that's like Mars. Either way, it's eventually ruled by Mercury, and Mercury rules the hands, because it's like Gemini is the Mercury sign that's like the shoulders, and then Mercury separates even more, or Virgo separates even more. So now everyone knows I have a mark on my boobie. Anyway, that's fine. And yeah, either way, my 3rd house and 4th house are empty. My 7th house is empty. And I'm like not very good at relationships. I've had like 2 boyfriends before, and I'm like pretty sure I'm a lesbian anyway, but like the girls I've liked haven't seemed interested, and I don't want to like make them uncomfortable by hitting on them anyway. So like when guys hit on me, I'm like, oh, I like attention. And so I've like dated a few guys, and like just nothing ever really seems to turn into a relationship. And that like the one thing about it doesn't matter if you're looking at the tropical, sidereal, Placidus houses, whole sign houses, like equal sign, whatever, all of the planets are making the same angles to each other in all of the different charts. And like you could argue like they're making different aspects, like so in my sidereal chart, I have my moon in Taurus and Pluto in Scorpio, and so those would be making an opposition. But in if my moon is in Gemini and Pluto is in Scorpio, sorry, my moon's in Gemini and Pluto's in Scorpio and tropical, and so those could be said, if you're looking at whole sign houses, those don't make an aspect because like it's sign-based aspects. They're like almost they're 8 degrees apart, so usually the moon would have like a bigger orb for aspects. So you could include that if you're looking at orb-based or degree-based aspects, but so some people might say I have a moon Pluto opposition. You use the faster planet first. Moon Pluto opposition. Some people might say I don't, depending on how they look at the chart, but they're still making that 8 degree, or it's like almost 180 degrees. It's off by 8 degrees. So the aspects, like I have the moon is square Saturn and my sun, and Saturn and the sun are opposite. And then like Mercury is also in that sign, so Saturn opposite. Saturn's definitely making a harsh aspect to the ruler of my 7th house. So it's square the moon. So my sidereal chart, Cancer, 7th house, Saturn square the moon. So that like is Saturn delays, but it doesn't deny. So like I'm not saying I'll never be in a relationship, but like it hasn't worked out so far. And I'm currently going through my Saturn return right now, so maybe soon things will change. But yeah, I feel like I don't want to be in a relationship because I don't know, like most of the people I've met like don't share my values. Like I don't see myself dating, like my first boyfriend, like there were things that he would say that I would assume were a joke to get me, like we worked together, and we had another coworker who told me like he liked to like say things that like he knew that I disagreed with, like to get me riled up, because he like, I don't know, which is probably just a bad sign anyway. But like, yeah, we were dating and he would say things that were like homophobic, and I'd be like, do you really believe that, or do you like, and I was like, I don't feel like I'm allowed to break up with him over this. Like, I don't know. Like, he would talk about Ben Shapiro, and I was like, what do you... And then he would say things like, oh, there are only 2 genders, and I thought that was a joke. And then eventually, he told me that it wasn't a joke, and he believed that, and I was like, okay, like, but we're already dating now, so it's like, now I have to convince him that that's true. I mean, that there are more than 2 genders. And then he had this assignment at school, like, we were both 24 when we met, and we both turned 25 while we were dating. Our relationship only lasted like 3 months. But so we were 24, 25, but he was going back to school, and I went to school and like graduated. I was 1 quarter late, but like 4 years, yeah. Anyway, and he was going back to school at 25. So he had an assignment. I just want to clarify, because I don't want it to sound like I was dating like a college student, like a 19-year-old when I was 25 or something. But anyway, he had an assignment that was like specifically about arguing, and I like a debate, and I didn't like arguing because my parents fought a lot, and I'm like, I don't want to argue about anything ever. So he had this assignment, and he was like, I want to do this with you, I want to like debate with you. And I was like I went through a list of like all kinds of debate topics, and he was like, no, like to all of them. And I was like, why am I doing your homework for you? But whatever. And I was like, what about when you talk about whether or not there's 2 genders? You could say there's 2 genders, and I can make a case that there's not. And then I was doing all this research, and then he changed his to say like there are 3 genders. I was gonna do air quotes, and then I confused myself. He's like, he made the case that there were potentially 3 genders, where it's like men and women, and then like something else. And I'm like, that was what I said I was gonna do, but okay, now I have to change my entire argument. And then I said, technically, every single person is their own gender, because gender is a performance, and no 2 people perform gender the same way. And then we were talking about, he's like, I just don't care about this at all. And I was like, okay, well, it's your assignment, you motherfucker. Like, why am I even helping you with this? Anyway, and then we ended up talking about like the ethics of porn, and I was like, okay, because I wrote an essay about that in college, about like feminist porn or something, and I was like, okay, anyway, we don't need to get more into that. But yeah, so relationships just don't really work out for me because yeah, I just haven't met anyone who like shares my values, I guess, who like I could see myself like dating and like marrying and like talking to every day without like getting really mad that they don't share the same kind of values as me. Yeah, what else? Is there anything else I could talk about? The moon in the 5th house. I'm very crafty. I mean, I have like this little watermelon coaster that I made. I'm like working on a beanie over here, and I just finished this checkered hat. So I do like the 5th house deals with children. A lot of times will be a signification, but I am not in a relationship. I don't really plan on having kids, but I am like creative because I've written music, like I said, my Valentine's Day album, and I do like crochet. I know how to knit. I don't really like knitting as much. I feel like it's so slow. Knitting is so slow to me. But yeah, moon in the 5th house definitely makes sense either way, but it's like, is it in Gemini or is it in Taurus? Gemini ruled by Mercury in the 8th house, or Taurus ruled by Venus in the 9th house. I don't know. But I do think, well, I work with my hands a lot, like with crochet, and then music is also like hands, because like piano, guitar, a lot of stuff with the hands. And then yeah, ladies, I'm good with my hands. And yeah, moon in Taurus ruled by Venus in Virgo. Like I said, I do music, but with music I feel like I haven't had a lot of the resources that I need. Like I feel like I would sound a lot better with a microphone, because I could sing a little bit softer, and like still like I feel like my phone isn't gonna pick it up if I'm doing it like singing softer, especially if I'm like playing guitar with it. So I'm like trying to sing a little bit louder than normal, and like I don't know, like I just need a microphone, and it hasn't been working out. And then my dad and I went to Guitar Center, and we were talking about getting a microphone, but he was like, you can't just plug it into your computer, you need like another interface between. And I was like, I don't know, like this just seems like too much right now, like, so I didn't do it. And then yeah, I don't know, I was just gonna say, and then Mars in Cancer, like I mentioned already, my mom said she didn't want to have kids when she had me, so like that makes a lot of sense. And she also told me like no singing at the dinner table. Like she was not very supportive of my singing, and like she would stop me like if I wasn't even eating. That's the thing that gets me. Like I get like, you're not supposed to talk with your mouth full, because you could like choke. And then if I'm singing and I have food in my mouth, like the same thing could happen. But like I don't even think there was food on the table yet when she said that. I was like singing, just like someone would say like a phrase that was in a song, and I would just sing that line. She'd be like, no singing at the dinner table. It's like, I've never heard that rule anywhere ever. It's like a little bit ridiculous. Like I know how to eat and talk separately. Like why don't you think I can like apply that knowledge to singing as well? So like I don't know, I'm like, you're ridiculous. Anyway, it's a little off topic. I'm kind of out of stuff to talk about. So let me know how you like this. It wasn't scripted or anything, like the other ones aren't scripted either, but kind of, because I mean I literally wrote something previously, like journal entries that I'm reading. But yeah, this is just off the top of my noggin. Anyway, now I'm pretty much done. I will read from my friend's book, Isabel Correa, Sex is from Mars, but I Love You from Venus. My name is in the credits of this book because I helped edit. So I'm gonna go, it's a book about, it's poetry Venus through the signs. So she starts with Venus and Aries and then does a poem for each sign. So I'm gonna read the poem. She gave me permission to read 2 of them. So I want to read Venus in Virgo and Venus in Libra because those are like the 2 that I possibly have. So I should have prepared and practiced this a little more because I'm not having a good time reading already, but here we go. Venus in Virgo, or Why I Love You Like a Matchstick in Love with Fire. I'm not usually so weightless. Then you saunter through me like an idea and I blush. Powdered glass. But is it you? Okay, I'm just gonna, there's like line breaks on it, so I'm just gonna read through them. I'm not a poet. I actually hated the poetry lessons that we got in like high school. I was like, this sucks. Anyway, but then I followed Isabel on Instagram and I was like, maybe poetry can be good. Anyway, Venus in Virgo, or Why I Love You Like a Matchstick in Love with Fire. I'm not usually so weightless. Then you saunter through me like an idea, and I blush. Powdered glass. But is it you I love, or just another chemical reaction? I don't have time for that answer. Instead, I get to work on my posture. I pledge to burn, and I burn. I love that, because, like, every time I have a crush, I'm like, do I really like this guy? Like I said, I just, like, a guy will, like, start giving me attention. I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun, like I'll think of a funny text and I'll be like, I shouldn't send it because I don't really like this guy, but then I want him to think I'm funny, you know? And so it's like, is this love or is this just a chemical reaction? Is this, you know? And then like I don't have time for that answer. I work on my posture. I think about my posture a lot. I'm just like, she gets it. Anyway, so that's my sidereal Venus that I felt like I related to a lot. But then I was also like, well, I have my sun and Chiron and Mercury all in Virgo, so even if I don't have Venus in Virgo, it still makes sense. And then this is Venus in Libra, which if I don't have Venus in Libra, I have Jupiter in Libra, so it's like there's still some Libra placements. Okay, Venus in Libra, or Why I Love You Like a Pressed Flower in Love with the Pages of a Book. I pressed a flower in there too. It's like falling out now though. Clipped and crimsoned, I am spellbound. What a delight to be saved, to be preserved, loved beyond my time. You and I are naturally temporary creatures, murmurs of spruce and spring, not meant to make it to November, but something, let's call it God, has given us the miracle of years. Years of petals, bedded in your sentences. Years abundant like a bouquet of minutes. Years to press our bodies against each other in our charming tirade against death. We deliver each morning, limb-locked, giddy with thirst. So I thought there was a part 2 on that, or this page 2. Anyway, so if you liked those, you can check out the rest of them. Buy my friend's book, Sex is from Mars, But I Love You from Venus by Isabel Correa. If you liked what I read earlier, check out Post-Colonial Astrology by Alice Sparkly Cat. If you want to hear my music, go check that out. My Valentine's Day album, Stupid Cupid, is probably going to be linked down below because I always do that. And that's about it. Let me know if you liked this or if you want to see things different, if you'd rather me like script it out and plan what I'm talking about more instead of just like mumbling through it. But that's pretty much how I do it in readings. I'm just like, I don't know, and then something will just come to me and I'll say it and I'll be like, I don't know what to talk about anymore, and something else will come to me and I'll say it. So also if you'd like more like background, if I'm talking about things, you're like Mars in Cancer, I don't know what that means. I recommend watching Chris Brennan's videos, the astrology podcast. He's very good at like recognizing that any episode could be somebody's first episode and like kind of going over the like more basic concepts. And so I've learned a lot watching his videos. Yeah, that's about it. So thanks for watching. Free Palestine, free Congo, free Sudan. Freedom for all oppressed beings everywhere. Okay, thank you. Bye.